Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Hello and welcome back, adventurers. We got a nice kickoff there with our remastered Thaumaturge guide, but it's time to get into the rankings. And this time we are ranking the implements for the Thaumaturge. Because your subclass is made up of implements you choose over time, we're going to look at the individual implements, all 10 of them. That is 9 that are in the remaster and 1 that is not because it was added much later in a more recent book, meaning Battlecry, and we'll rank them all here. Now, one thing I want to put out there, and there's fair criticism I've got about this, people think about these things often put together, how they work possibly with each other when we have mix and match. I'm not doing that only because it's really hard to rank other than individually, and assuming this is just the one you're taking. Obviously, you're going to take others, and I might bring up some things here and there about that. Like, it may not be great to combo up multiple reaction implements, for instance. But other than that, I am ranking them individually. So it's just the best way I can figure out how to do this. Having said that, what does it mean to rank an implement? Well, I am, of course, going from S to D, but let's get into how exactly I'm going to rank them on that scale. S is an implement that provides value in any combat and with any party in any adventure. It is strong enough that not having it would be considered a mistake or the wrong way to play the class. Its effects are encounter winning. This should be an easy call as your first implement that you would absolutely take to Paragon. A, this is an implement that you will be able to use often. Maybe not every single turn, but often. It should provide benefit to yourself and other party members, or be so strong in one of the two things that it makes up for the fact that you don't have both. There shouldn't be combats in which it wouldn't provide aid at all. If it has out-of-combat utility, that's a plus, but it's certainly not necessary. You should want it to be taken to Paragon. So this is still an implement you should want to get all the way up to its highest level, though it needs to be one you would certainly take at least to Adept. So even if you aren't going to take it to Paragon, it necessarily should get to Adept, or it's just not up here at A. B is an implement that is solid by itself and should be useful in most combat encounters, though it may not be here and there. It might only aid you or the party, and not both. In the right build, it might be capable of being A or S tier, but on its own, it isn't. It should be worth the Adept for sure, like taking it to Adept, except for maybe very few builds, but generally speaking, if it's B, it's probably worth taking to Adept, but it's usually not strong enough to take all the way to Paragon, unless there's a very specific reason to do so. C is an implement that will rarely be useful, or, though it does come up, packs very little punch for what it does. It might be more utility and less for combat, but still makes for a solid, say, third implement, but wouldn't be your first and probably not even your second pick, and you would be hard-pressed to take it to Adept and never Paragon. D is an implement that won't come in handy almost ever, except extremely niche situations. I would never add it to my kit, even as a third implement. Don't even think about Adept or Paragon at all. All right, that all being set up, we should really talk about what is it that an implement gives you. As I kept mentioning words like Adept and Paragon, we should probably talk about what that means. So every implement is going to provide 4 things. It's going to give you a benefit when you take it, called its initiate benefit. It's going to give you a benefit if you move it to Adept. So 2 of your implements that you take as a Thaumaturge, if you're going all the way up to level 20, that is, 2 of them you're going to be able to move up to Adept level, or Adept rank. Now, there is actually, I think, an 18th level feat that lets you take your 3rd to Adept, but I'm not going to worry about that for this. Then, at level 9, you have your Intensify Vulnerability feature, if you will, and every single implement has something that happens when you use Intensify Vulnerability that's specific to that implement, so we'll talk about those. And finally, 1 of your implements you'll get to take to Paragon level at 17, and that is the big capstone benefit, but you're only going to be able to take 1 implement all the way up there. So it has to be very carefully chosen, and of course it's very high level. There are no feats that rely on which implement you choose, so don't worry about that. So instead, we just get to focus on these 4 benefits, and we're going to start with the amulet. The initiate benefit for the amulet is you're going to gain Amulet's Abeyance. This is a reaction ability. The trigger is that the target of your exploit vulnerability, which I might refer to as EV from time to time, just to shorten it because it's a lot to say every time, would damage you or an ally within 15 feet of you. You have to be holding the amulet and, of course, have an EV target. And then whichever one was attacked, you or this ally within 15 feet, you're going to get to use the reaction to target that creature, and that creature will gain resistance to the damage equal to 2 plus your level. And that's just a basic reaction you can use any time, so it's straight up damage reduction. Then we have the Adept benefit. If you move this to Adept, whoever gained the resistance from Amulet's Abeyance gets to choose a type of damage that they took. So if they took slashing damage from the creature's claw strike, they'll choose slashing, but if they took, I don't know, slashing and fire, they could choose whichever one of those. And that creature is going to gain 5 resistance to the type that they chose until the start of your next turn, meaning you, the Thaumaturge. And this goes up to 10 resistance at level 15. So they have a constant resistance against that type of damage, which some of them are going to be very common, so probably helps out reducing a lot more than one attack. Then, if you use Intensify Vulnerability while holding your amulet, you are going to gain a +2 status bonus to your AC and saves until the start of your next turn against your against the target of EV, right? Your exploit vulnerability target. Finally, the Paragon benefit. When you use the reaction, you and all allies in 15 feet are going to gain the initial resistance to damage, which helps against AoE situations, but even if they're not hit, they still get that, even though it's not resisting anything. And then the lingering 10 resistance, they're also going to get that. So everybody around you, so if you're going to keep getting pummeled by the same types of damage, everybody's going to get this nice constant 10 until the start of your next turn. Even if those creatures are not hit by any damage, they still get to choose what their lingering resistance is of the damage types that did happen that triggered this. So if I was hit by fire and I used this, and that's the only thing I was hit by, everybody 15 feet, hey, great, we got 10 resistance to fire. That's not a bad thing. They weren't hit by fire originally, but they could be hit by fire soon. This is a very nice thing to have in a lot of combats where you have same damage types. All right, so this is a solid defensive capability. The fact that it is a reaction that you can use every turn makes it reliable. This is exactly how it was before the remaster. So nothing has changed here. It was already this good, and it's still good, right? Unless you're hiding in the back somewhere, acting as a ranged marshal, which is very possible, it's likely that every turn you'll be able to use it on an ally or yourself rather than just yourself. Whereas, you know, yourself is probably going to be fairly regular to use it on. 2+ your level is honestly, like the way resistance works in this game, that's actually a lot of resistance because resistance doesn't go up quickly normally. So this is going to feel good. And then, you know, even if you're only getting to level 10, let's say that's as far as your campaign goes, at that max level, every turn you or an ally getting resist 12, yeah, that's going to feel really good. That's a lot of damage reduction. But that, of course, relies on the damage coming from your exploit vulnerability target. So that does increase the chance that you'll be using this on yourself, but that's not necessarily true. You can always, of course, use exploit vulnerability on a creature that's right up against your ally. Still, you're going to be able to use it all the time. Whether it's helping you or an ally, I think you'll be able to use this pretty regularly. Thaumaturges are action-starved as a class, so this being a reaction is also really helpful because they're not reaction-starved, that's for sure. In fact, it's pretty much through implements you get a lot of your good reaction options. It does compete, though, with those other implements, which, of course, we haven't gotten to, but the bell and the weapon also have reactions that you might want to use. So think about the fact that you could have too many reaction implements if you take the wrong set. So we have to just keep that in mind. The lingering resistance I like probably more than I like the immediate resistance. The immediate's nice, but the fact that it can linger, especially when you've got an ally who's, you know, trying to tank, is up in there getting hit by 2 or 3 creatures, this can save just a ton of hit points. Now, granted, it's only against the target of your EV, so, you know, it's more they're being flanked and getting hit and maybe twice, possibly even 3 times in a round if they didn't move. That's all really nice. This does mean that you should keep in mind who you're targeting with exploit vulnerability. And yes, I would probably take this to Adept almost every time I took it because I want that lingering resistance. This also has a really easy intensify vulnerability to gain benefit from, which I probably refer to as IV going forward, because again, easier. I just wish it was against more than just the target of exploit vulnerability, right? It's only against that target that you get the bonuses, but it is a big bonus. So you have to be really careful who you chose as the target of EV with the amulet here. Is it worth taking all the way to Paragon? That really depends on your party. You're going to have a party with multiple characters that will reliably be near you at all times. Yeah, probably, because that area giving resistance to everybody can feel great. If it's more split and you've got two party members that are going to be far away, only one up with you, it may not be as valuable. So I might. It really depends on your setup. But since I would absolutely take it to Adept, there's a chance I would take it to Paragon. It's got, potent ability on it. This easily falls into the A category for me. Next up, we have the Bell. The initiate benefit, you gain Ring Bell. And this is a reaction that the trigger is the target of your exploit vulnerability makes a strike or cast a spell that would affect you or an ally. It requires that, of course, you're holding the bell and that your target of EV is within 30 feet of you. Then there are two options for how you use it. If the target of your EV used a spell, then you're going to force them to make a Fortitude save or become Stupefied 1 on a failure, Stupefied 2 on a crit fail, until the end of your next turn. Now, the target doesn't have to make a flat check to make sure that they can successfully cast the spell they just cast, but it will affect their spell attack and their spell save DC, so it'll help with those for the ally that's being targeted or yourself. Otherwise, there's Disrupting Harmony, and this is if they use a strike. So the target must succeed a will save or become your choice of Enfeebled 1 on a fail, 2 on a crit fail, or Clumsy 1 on a fail, crit fail, 2 on a crit fail, until the end of your next turn. This does affect the chance for them to hit with that strike if you chose the right corresponding debuff, right? So if it's strength-based fighter, it needs to be Enfeebled. If it's dex-based, it needs to be Clumsy. So a little knowledge is probably required there, but you probably gained it anyway because it's your EV target. You might know more about them. The Adept benefit. I talked about how those Stupefied, Enfeebled, and Clumsies all go away at the end of your next turn. Well, if you go up to Adept with this, they last 3 rounds instead of 1, which is certainly a lot better. Then your Intensify Vulnerability. If you use IV while holding your bell, then when you strike your EV target, the creature will have a -2 to the saves against your bell, or against your ring bell, for 1 round, or a -3 if you did critically strike it. And then the Paragon benefit, Ring Bell, the stat effects become a 2 on a fail and a 3 on a crit fail, which those are nice increases. And this can now be triggered against any creature, not just the target of your exploit vulnerability. However, if it's not your EV, then it only lasts 1 round, not 3. So this is another one that did not change with the remaster. This is exactly how the bell worked. Don't worry, we're getting to them. There are some that absolutely changed. This just isn't one of them. I mentioned that with the amulet, you don't want multiple reaction implements. Honestly, though, if you're going to take this to at least Adept, this is the reaction implement to combo with. If you have it at least Adept, it's going to last 3 rounds, and you can use your other reactions, those in between rounds, and that's going to feel pretty good. So you could double up your reaction implements if you're going to take Bell. Anyway, getting ahead of myself a little bit, the reaction here isn't as strong as the amulet, in my opinion. The amulet, while exclusively reducing damage, just kind of always works, right? It always reduces damage. It may not have the chance to turn a hit into a miss, or turn a failed save into a successful save, but it'll always do something. With no outcome on success, it means that you're likely going to get value from this maybe 50% of the time when you use it, or possibly less than that. When the creature does fail, the base result is good, but not usually encounter changing. It might change the outcome of that attack or spell, but only rarely. And with the initiate benefit only lasting 1 round, any failure from an enemy is so temporary, it's really hard to get too excited about it. This makes the Adept honestly necessary in my mind if you're going to take this, because getting that 3 rounds really makes this come to life and makes those failures here and there not feel so bad, because the success, meaning they fail to save and you successfully debuff them, feels way better. The Intensify Vulnerability which we will see regularly about them, relies on a successful strike that same turn you used IV in order to get value from it. While not necessarily a problem, it can be if you need to do too many other things on that same round. Now, you can never use EV and IV on the same round. That's just how this is built. But you have to use IV, move, and strike. All three of your actions right there. Doesn't really put in a lot of space for anything else. Anyway, giving a save reduction, if you do use it though, and strike them, is solid, and a -2 or -3 is actually a lot to that save. So a buff of 10% or 15% chance that they will fail and therefore be debuffed feels a lot better. The Paragon benefit is a massive quality of life improvement, not forcing you to worry about your EV target so much. The thing is though, you are probably still going to wait until your EV triggers it because you want them to have the 3-round debuff, not just one. Won't always be the case, but it'll be probably regular, except for when you maybe like killed your EV target this round, and then otherwise you wouldn't be able to use your bell, but now you can still use it, just it won't last 3 rounds. When I'm looking at this, if I'm taking the bell, and I still think it's worth taking, I still think it's a good reaction, I'm absolutely taking this to Adept because that really makes this thing, it makes it all work, but I'm probably not taking it to Paragon. You could, but I still think you're likely not to, and that's why this drops into the B category for me. It's still a good take, I just don't think it's the most powerful. All right, next up we have the Chalice. The initiative benefit, you gain Drink from the Chalice, which is a 1-action ability. Once per round while holding the Chalice, you either drink or administer to an adjacent ally. If you or the ally simply sips from it, then that character is going to gain temporary hit points equal to your level, a minimum of 3 though, until the end of your next turn. Or they can choose to drain the goblet, and if that happens, the target's going to heal for 3 times your level in hit points, but then it takes 10 minutes of nobody drinking from it at all in order for this to be able to be used again. But even after you drain it, you can still sip it. So you can still gain temporary hit points, but only regular healing once per combat, basically. The Adept benefit, if you or an ally within 30 feet takes critical slashing or piercing damage or takes persistent bleed damage, you get a buff to the Chalice until the end of your next turn for the target that received this damage. That makes the sip 2 times your level instead of just 1 times your level, and it makes the drain 5 times your level healing instead of 3 times your level. Then we've got Intensify Vulnerability. When you strike your EV target after you've intensified, if you use your Chalice before the end of that turn, Sip gets another extra times to your level, so it becomes, instead of 1 times normally and 2 times triggering the Adept, it could be 3 times, or it could just be 2 times if you haven't triggered Adept, but it adds another level worth on there. And then the Drain adds another 2 times your level to the amount healed. So IV does boost things considerably, but keep in mind you have to IV and still drink before the end of your turn. Then the Paragon benefit, when someone goes to drain the goblet, meaning get the healing from it, that creature also reduces its clumsy, enfeebled, frightened, stupefied, and stunned values by 1. That's if stunned has a value, not if it's just like stunned for a round or something. It can reduce drain value by 1 as well, but it can only do that once per day per target. Also, drinking can counteract poisons and diseases, but only once before midnight if it fails per affliction. So if you fail at getting rid of it, it's going to linger and you won't be able to try to do it again before midnight. Okay, so this is our first non-reaction implement, and this is also our first that got a considerable buff from the remaster. Healing's always nice to have. Temporary hit points can be nice to have. And before the remaster, this was all very underwhelming. With the remaster, we've really spiked the hit points. So with the temp HP, it used to be 2 plus half your level, which now with a minimum of 3, we're actually better at level 1, tied at level 2, right? And then we just go up from there. And this outscales the old version considerably. All the buffs are around the temp HP, by the way, because the restoring health all stayed the same. But the Adept then used to give another slight increase, but it was 2 plus your charisma modifier plus your level, in the case that somebody got crit or was persistent bleeding. But now it's just straight up 2 times your level, which is going to be better at every level except for... No, because you get this level 7 at all levels, so it's just already better. And it just scales better as well. And then we get another buff from the way that they changed the IV here, because it used to add another half of your level to the temp HP. Now it adds another whole level. That's really solid. Honestly, if somebody got crit, then this round or next round, if you go to just give them temp HP, I mean, you could potentially, right away at level 9, when you get Intensified Vulnerability, you could be giving them 27 temp HP. It only lasts for 1 round, but that is a ton of temp HP. If they're going to get hit again, it might reduce the entire attack. I mean, that's going to feel pretty good. So, of course, you can also give it to yourself, which also might be very necessary if you're up in the front lines, but you become this really solid support character. As far as the healing from drinking it straight down, 3 times your level isn't amazing, right? We're kind of in the realm, but a little lower than a 1-action heal spell if you kept using it and upcasting it. But again, you're not using a resource that goes away, just has to cool down for 10 minutes. So it's nice to have that. I will say that while the initiative benefit is good, and I like the power of the adept, and it'll come up, but it's very specific in the damage types. So I don't like that it's tied to specifically being crit for piercing, slashing, or just having that persistent bleed happen. That makes it somewhat less useful. The Intensified Vulnerability is really solid. That's just good. But keep in mind, you have to use it before the end of this turn when you use IV. So you have to use Intensified Vulnerability and use 1 action to either sip or drink. And then if there's moving, you might not be able to strike this round. It might still be worth it, but you have to really weigh those things up. Again, action starved as we are, having a 1-action ability here is kind of potentially problematic. Then we've got the Paragon benefit. The Paragon benefit is nice to really get rid of some things that can be very difficult, honestly, to get rid of. Do I think that you need the Paragon for this to feel good? No, I think this feels good even without Paragon at all. I think that I probably wouldn't even take it to Paragon if I have any spellcasters who can probably get rid of those things just as easily with lower level spells, and I don't have to worry about doling out the hit points to somebody if they don't need them and they just need to get rid of those debilitations, and I don't want to, heal somebody up while somebody was over there crippled. And I just don't know that I think the Paragon really jives with the rest of what's going on here. I probably would have just liked another boost or to linger more than 1 round or something. So I think everything up to there is good. Initiate, IV are both fantastic. Adept has its place, but is okay. And Paragon, I probably wouldn't take at all. Because of all that, I'm going to say that this lands at a B. And thankfully it got buffs, because honestly, this was a C before it got its buffs. Now I think it can be solid a B, but before the temp HP was just so lackluster, I just couldn't recommend it at all. So yeah, definitely take a look at it with its buffs. All right, and we're up to the Lantern. The initiate benefit, you have the ability to cause light or extinguish as a free action from your Lantern while you're holding it. But that free action has the Concentrate trait, just so you know. When it has light, it creates a 20-foot emanation of light. You and allies in that light get a +1 to your perception checks to see things in the light, and a +1 to recall knowledge checks against creatures in the light. During exploration, as unseen things come into the bright light, GMs can make a secret check for you to notice them, even if you're not searching, because they come into your light. The Adept benefit. The light becomes a 30-foot emanation. Any invisible or ethereal creatures in the light are just concealed to you. You still can't affect creatures on the ethereal plane, but at least you know they're there, and they are just concealed. The Intensify Vulnerability here. Your EV target gets a -2 to deception and stealth checks when they're in the light, and your bonus from the light is +2 against it, so that whole +1 to perception and +1 to recall knowledge, that becomes +2s. Your EV target can't be concealed in your light at all, but it can still be hidden or undetected if it's behind cover. Then there's the Paragon benefit. Now it's a 40-foot emanation, and when an illusion or polymorph effect comes into the light, the GM is going to make a secret counteract check to let you and your allies see through the illusion. It's not going to dismiss the illusion, but you'll be able to see through it and know what it is. Same with any polymorph effect. Okay, so I like that it's passive. Having an implement you don't really have to worry about is nice. Nothing here takes an action except for the IV, of course. I have to say, though, that the bonuses just aren't blowing me away. The constant light is good, but there are many ways to get light effects, so that alone really isn't enough. And this implement actually got a nerf, unless I'm reading something incorrectly, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong about this. This only gives you the 20-foot emanation of light, and then 30, and then 40, which the pre-master did as well, but then they also gave you dim light, another 20, 30, or 40 out beyond that, and you don't have that anymore. Unless there's a rule change I completely missed, and anytime you get light, it just automatically gives you the dim out beyond that. But it used to be bright and dim, and as far as I know, we just have the 20, 30, and 40 feet now, which isn't great, right? We lose that. And that really hurts for anybody who's got, dim light vision, and yeah, that's fairly common, I think. Dark vision is common enough for some, but it's hard to get, whereas you might just have the dim light vision. So I don't love that. The requirement of being in light really isn't a huge deal, since 20 already isn't a bad emanation, but 30 and 40, I mean, you're going to have a lot of things in that light. The adept bonus I consider a decent boost, but mostly for the range, and invisible creatures and ethereal creatures just don't come up that much. There's not that many, so them just being concealed is fine, but I think you're going to get that bonus once every 4 or 5 combats, maybe? It really depends on your adventure, but I don't think it's going to be common. I think this might be more conditional than the adept, which you're going to get crit by slashing and piercing way more, and I already hit that one for it. But, condition or not, we still get a nice range boost. The IV doesn't require us to strike, which is a win. But the bonuses that you get from doing it probably don't matter 90% of the time, so ouch. This isn't so bad, though, because when you need it and you use IV, and when you don't, you just don't. You're not going to IV this all the time. It's not going to be your go-to for that, but you know when you need to. Then there's the Paragon benefit. Again, great increase, 40-foot emanation, huge, very cool. And the rest of it is extremely circumstantial. I really just hardly care at all. There is no way I'm going to take this to Paragon unless I'm in a very specific campaign. Also, this won't be my first implement. It just isn't substantial enough, I don't think, compared to what other implements offer to be your primary. I would take it as a second or third. Depending on the party's dark vision availability, I would probably take it to adept just to get the wider area. Though with the nerf to light, it's already on the border between B and C. I'm dropping this to a C. I know there's people out there who like the lantern, but especially now, again, even if it didn't have the debuff, and I'm not 100% sure it is, but I'm pretty sure it is, even without that, this still would have been a C for me. It was teetering on the border, but I just don't think it's enough that it should be something you go to as a primary implement to survive on. And we're up to the mirror. You gain the initiative benefit Mirror's Reflection. This is one action. You create an illusory duplicate of yourself somewhere in 15 feet. You can flank with this duplicate of yourself. You occupy both spaces, so it is truly a duplicate. When you take an action, you choose which takes it. So if you take like the strike action, then one of you is going to strike, you choose which one. If you move, you can move from either location, but then the other one disappears, so it solidifies one versus the other. Your duplicate can be attacked just like you can, and no matter which of you gets hit by a strike, you take the damage, right? It all comes out of your health pool. If both of you are subjected to the same thing, like a fireball, you only take damage once, though. And at the start of your next turn, duplicate disappears, or of course, if you get knocked unconscious, it disappears, no surprise. The adept ability, while you've got Mirror active, if either of your versions is struck by an adjacent enemy, then you can use a free action to have that version explode into shards, dealing 2 plus half your level in damage in a 5-foot emanation around that version of you, and you are immune to this damage, by the way. This has a reflex save to it. The Intensify Vulnerability, you become concealed to your EV target, but you can't hide or sneak with the concealment. It just is going to make it hard for them to hit you. The Paragon benefit: when you create your duplicate, you can use either version of you to immediately interact, seek, or strike. So it's a free action, one action when you create your duplicate. So once again, we have an action implement, meaning we have to face the action starvation issue. In this case, we are acting in an offensive way with it, but it can still potentially benefit allies. The fact that you and your allies can flank with each other is meaningful. It means you can flank with your allies as well. Giving yourself a way to increase your chance to hit and crit, especially as a near martial, is actually really important, because you do have that slight reduction some of the time to your chance to hit versus a regular martial. That does come with the downside of taking extra damage, right? Because both of you can be hit. But that gets mitigated a little bit once you get to Adept, where you can dismiss and cause some damage and then solidify the other one. I do want to let you know this was a buff. It used to be at Adept that whichever of your versions of you was struck, it would necessarily shatter and the other one would become solid. Now it's a free action to do that, which means you can decide if you want that version to explode or not, because there's times you may not want to. If you set yourself up to be able to flank with an ally with your copy, and maybe you're flanking with a different ally behind you, you might want to keep both around even if they're getting hit, to help with flanking purposes. There's other reasons you might want to keep them both around as well. That is actually it seems like a tiny buff, and it's actually solid. The damage from exploding is also very minimal, so I don't think it's the biggest deal to not do it. It's just not a lot of damage. It's fine. It's got a small AoE, so there's that, but I just don't think it's exciting. It can be funny, though, if two enemies go to flank one of the versions of you. The first, one of them hits, then you explode, and oh, they're not flanking anymore. Okay, so that's kind of funny, and then they can both take damage. So there is something to it. The Ivy giving you concealment is fine. I don't hate it, but it's not the greatest buff in the world. It's just okay. The DC 5 flat check sometimes helps, sometimes does not. The Paragon benefit, though, is incredible, because getting a free strike or seek or interact, you are action starved. This is action economy that you can really use, especially just creating it to flank with yourself against the target of exploit vulnerability to instantly strike is going to feel really good. Yes, you have to wait a long time to get up to that Paragon benefit, but this is something I would absolutely take to Paragon if I could. And with the change to Adept, I really, really like it at the Adept level as well, because you've got decision making you can do here. The damage isn't as important. It does some, but the damage isn't as important as being able to decide how you want your mirror image in yourself to exist. So this was a B for me, and again, it sounds like a small thing, but the Adept change is actually pretty impressive when it comes to the tactical concept of it. So I'm boosting this up to an A, and yes, partially because I just think mirror is so cool thematically. Next up, we have Regalia. This has an initiative benefit where you get a +1 to circumstance bonus to deception, diplomacy, and intimidation checks, just flat out. Allies who can see you can follow the expert. If you're just trained, you don't have to be expert, and they get a +1 to follow the expert. While holding your Regalia, you give off a 15-foot emanation, and your allies get a +1 against fear effects. At the end of your turn, when you would decrease any frightened value you have, anybody in that 15-foot emanation, theirs reduced by 1 as well, getting rid of fear. So all that stuff around fear, solid. The Adept benefit, your circumstance bonus is a +2 to any of the 3 that we talked about, the charisma-based skills, but it has to be at least master to get that. So if you get them all to master, they all get the +2. Follow the expert bonus goes to a +2 if you're trained, a +3 if you're expert, and a +4 if you're master or legendary. In that 15-foot aura, it's now giving +1 to all mental effect saves, everything for your allies in there, and everybody in that aura gets a +2 bonus to damage rolls, which goes to +3 at level 11 and +4 at 17, which of course, is good for you too. Intensify vulnerability. When you strike your EV target, you choose one ally that you can see. That ally is going to get a +1 circumstance bonus to attack rolls against the same creature until the start of your next turn. If you crit, this is a +2. So just helping take down the same creature. And the Paragon benefit. If you crit fail to coerce, make an impression, or request, you get a fail instead, which can help because the crit fails on those kind of hurt. Follow the expert now gives a flat +3 if you're trained. You should be trained to give your allies a +3, and a +4 if you're expert or above, so your allies are going to succeed if they're following the expert for you. Allies in the aura can't be off guard while being flanked unless you're also being flanked. And allies in the aura, they get to reduce the effect of clumsy, enfeebled, stupefied, frightened, and sickened as if they were one less. So if they were like enfeebled 1, it's like they're not enfeebled. If they were enfeebled 3, they act like they're enfeebled 2. It doesn't make the enfeebled go away, but in the aura, then the conditions are reduced unless you share that same condition. So if you're both enfeebled 1, you're both just enfeebled 1. All right, so here we have another passive, and passives are nice because they don't deal with any actions. They don't compete with any other implements, generally speaking. This is one of our Skill Monkey setup options. We actually have 2 that are really Skill Monkey related. This is definitely one of them. +1 to the charisma checks, skill checks is great. Charisma skills are really solid. +1 to demoralize alone would feel worth it. So this is just good. Don't underestimate that. The aura is also just, solid. Fear comes up plenty. Obviously, it's not everywhere, but it comes up plenty. So don't think you're not going to be able to save against fear effects. Between demoralize and fear auras, they're just going to come up. But of course, once you get to adept, that's crazy. Reducing frighten for everybody in there is really good. They might not even be penalized by frighten by the time it gets to their turn because you reduced it for them, which is really cool. Yes, again, circumstantial, but solid when it happens. Now, this does only affect those in a 15-foot aura from you, which isn't huge, but again, if you're up front with at least one ally, it's probably giving you enough value right there because you're the ones that are probably going to get feared the most. Mental effects, you might be the ones targeted, you might not, but they're probably going to think you're going to be the weakest against mental effects, thinking you don't have as good a saves, and you're going to help everybody save. I know I haven't talked about the Follow the Expert yet. I don't want to ignore it. It's good. It's one of the few that gives a really solid out-of-combat bonus, and honestly, if you're going to go that Skill Monkey route with this, yeah, everybody should just follow the expert when they're trying to do things like sneak, right? This is a great way to really help the team out and succeed at group activities, and that's usually where things honestly fall apart for parties trying to do something really interesting outside of combat. And the bonus is just getting insanely high, right? A +4 is incredibly high. So yeah, you're going to feel good about all of that. Anyway, getting back to our increases, adept, solid, +2 to charisma checks. That's a whole proficiency rank. That's nuts. That feels really good. Remember, this is circumstance, so you can add status on top of that. If you've got ways to buff it with a status effect, you could be really solid in all those skills. The aura granting, again, your bonus to all mental effects. These are some of the most crippling in the game. If you fail a reflex and you take a little more damage from fireball, that's one thing. If you fail, say, a mental effect that would otherwise control your ally, that's a whole different story. You definitely don't want that happening. So really, really good there. I would probably use a third action on a turn to demoralize a creature rather than use the Ivy bonus. I don't love the Ivy bonus here, but that's fine. Then we have Paragon. This is tricky because the biggest win are the aura buffs. Allies that are not being flanked is a solid defensive increase, but they have to be within your aura to get it, and you have to also not be flanked. That one's not that uncommon. I think it's more common that you might all share a condition, so you can't reduce that, but it's still good. I just don't know that I see Paragon as reliable in its buffs as I do in the Initiate and the Adept, which I certainly love. Having said that, I could absolutely see reasons to take it to Paragon, so it's not that I wouldn't do it. It would just, I'd have to think more about it, but absolutely I'm taking this early on. This is good enough where I could take it as my first implement and be happy with it. Yeah, this is A tier. I think people might sleep on it because it doesn't sound exciting, but man, those buffs are good. All right, now we have Shield, which isn't in Dark Archive Remastered, because it had come out not long ago in the summer. The Initiate benefit, you get the Shield block feat. If your shield is reduced to 0 hit points, it stays at 1, and you can still raise it, but you cannot use the shield block reaction. And the AC you get from raising it is only a +1 if it's normally a +2, and 0 if it's normally a +1. It is still considered broken, and you can't shield block until you repair it, but it does still count as an implement, because a lot of things have to happen. You have to be holding an implement. You're still holding your implement, so that's okay. Starting at level 5, when you exploit vulnerability, you can raise your shield as a free action. That's huge. The adept benefit, when your shield is raised, you get its AC bonus added to your saves against spells and magical effects. You can shield block against damage from spells and magical effects with shield block. Awesome. The intensified vulnerability, when you strike your EV target, your shield regains hit points equal to half your level, or it gains your charisma modifier added to its hardness until the start of your next turn if it was already at full. So if you're at full health, you still might do this just to increase the hardness. That is actually really solid. And Paragon, when you raise the shield, you give all of its bonuses, meaning AC straight up, spells, magic effect +2, so +2 to all those, to all allies in 15 feet, and you can shield block for any of them. Yeah, this is incredible. This obviously didn't get a buff in the remaster because it's not from the remaster. Didn't need one. Can you get shield block without having this? Yeah. But using a shield normally means that you can't access other implements easily, because between this and a weapon, your hands are going to be full, though your weapon might be your implement, so then that's probably okay, and yeah, I don't see that being a problem. This allows for true shield builds, though, and gives you great bonuses on top of it. The fact that your shield really can't be destroyed ever by damage is actually really cool, and kind of a big buff on its own. But the real win from the initiative benefit, honestly, it comes from level 5 boost, where you can raise a shield as a free action when you use EV, right? When you exploit vulnerability. Because, again, action economy is key here for this class in particular, and that kind of action economy is so meaningful. It's defensive on top of prepping your offense. All of that's really, really helpful. So you should be able to keep your shield raised and get off a strike most rounds, right? Because you don't have to use EV every round if your target is still alive. This also makes you the tankiest Thaumaturge out there. You're no Guardian, but that would be, a great free archetype to think about with this implement. The adept benefit is probably the biggest increase we have seen at all, granting basically a proficiency rank added to saving throws against magic and spells. That's just the vast majority of saving throws, so yeah, that's huge. This is also one of the few IV that's worth using regularly if possible. The constant back and forth of your shield taking damage and healing up, or increasing its ability to reduce damage, that means you're going to constantly be able to keep using your shield more so than a regular shield user would. You don't need to every round or anything if you don't feel like it's going to be important, but I can see why you would want to every round. And finally, the Paragon benefit, getting your allies in the mix, big buff for everybody there, making you, this is probably the best way to help defend your allies. Well, this and possibly amulet, but this is massive. If I was taking this, I would choose it as my first and really define my playstyle with it, and I'd upgrade it each time I could. The only thing holding it back is that it only benefits allies at the Paragon level. This is certainly not at the level where I think not taking it is wrong. It's just really, really solid. So this isn't anything S tier, but it is a really strong A tier implement. That brings us to the tome. Don't worry, we're getting near the end. The initiative benefit, while holding the tome, you get a +1 circumstance to all recall knowledge checks. You're going to choose 2 skills during daily prep. You're going to be trained in both of them for the day. At 3rd level, you become expert in one of those 2 skills, so you choose which one's expert, and at 5th level, you're expert in both of them. The adept benefit, if you're holding your tome, you get a free recall knowledge at the start of your turn against any creature you're observing. If you succeed, you have a +1 to your next attack roll against that target before the start of your next turn. Your free skills are now Master and Expert, right? When you get this at level 7, and at level 9 or higher, they're just both Master. Your Intensified Vulnerability, which is unique here, you're going to roll a d20 and leave it aside. Anytime before the start of your next turn, you can use the result of that roll against for a strike you use against the target of your EV, if you want to. You don't have to, but you can. And the Paragon benefit, while holding it, you can use esoteric lore to start your combats, meaning for your initiative rolls, and that's against creatures and haunts. If you do so, you also get a +3 circumstance bonus to the roll. Your recall knowledge circumstance bonus is now a +2 instead of +1, and your adept plus to hit bonus isn't just to the next strike, it's to all strikes before the start of your next turn. The temporary skills are just straight up legendary now. Should let you know that those temporary skills you're taking cannot be used for any training, like any feat taking purposes. So this one does some interesting things, and importantly is once again passive. Recall knowledge is underrated by a lot of people. It's really good. It's especially good for thaumaturges because of esoteric lore, which is ridiculously potent when it comes to recalling knowledge about creatures. Getting a boost to that is just good. It's not crazy, but it's really good. With the 2 free skills, I wouldn't normally be pumped about them. There are good choices, even though you can't take feats though. So, things that'll come up a lot anyway, you might just want to take, even if you don't want them to be permanent, like +2, for instance, to stealth. You may not care about any of the stealth feats, but having that stealth, moving it up as you go, can be really valuable. Once moved to adept, the stock definitely rises. Free recall knowledge with a buff is really good. Don't underestimate that. That's really good. And then turning that into an increased chance to hit if you succeed, and you've got esoteric lore, you're probably going to succeed the majority of the time. Yeah, that's really good. Because esoteric lore is using your best stat, is always maxed out, and gets a bonus on top. Yeah, you're probably going to succeed at a lot of recall knowledge checks. So that's really great. The IV here is interesting. I like that it grants you the extra d20, which, effectively you're rolling with what might be known as advantage in like D&D, but fortune effect here. Fortune is broader than that. Anyway, that's usually better than just a +1 or +2. It's giving you 2 chances at a good roll. I think that's really solid, right? You're kind of getting some things that normally are part of the investigator class in this, which is kind of fun. So you're kind of a partial investigator, not really, but I think, you get the idea. Once we get all the way up to Paragon, these are sizable increases as well. The daily skills being legendary is just amazing. So you can have 3 legendary skills at level 17. Well, 4 at level 17. Yeah, you can have a lot of legendary skills at level 17. I am far more excited, though, about the initiative bonus, because you do want to go first. And at this point, esoteric lore is going to be, when you take this, a +30 at level 17, and then we have a +3 on top of that. So yeah, +31, that's you're going to go first a lot of the time. You've got your +2 to that free recall knowledge every round. There's just a really good chance that's going to succeed and give you a boost. The final boost increasing to all attacks before starting your next turn, that's good, but it's not the most important just because you're not going to take a whole lot of swings. But it could be good, and especially if you take the weapon implement and get a reaction potentially, you have more chances to gain that benefit. This is really solid from start to finish. In my mind, it's somewhat in competition with Regalia for a spot. This is less team focused and more you focused, but the combo of the two is also still very good. Having said that, I don't see myself taking this as a first implement like I did possibly with the Regalia, because the initiative benefit just, I don't know if it's strong enough to warrant that by itself. So I would take it maybe probably as my second, and then I definitely would take it up to adept. And it's got a chance of going to Paragon, not a high chance, but it's certainly got a chance. So I'm going to give this a B, but it's definitely a solid high B edging on A. All right, and then we've got the wand. The initiative benefit, you are going to gain a new activity, that's 2 actions, called Fling Magic, and you're going to choose one of 3 elemental types, fire, cold, or electricity. You're going to target 1 creature in 60 feet when you use the 2 action ability. That creature is going to make a reflex save against your class DC, and that's against 3d4 damage of the type you chose. This increases by a d4 every odd level, and this can be boosted to d6s instead of d4s every other round. You boost it, next round you can't, next round you boost it, and that'll help increase the damage there. At Adept, your range becomes 120 feet. You can select now 2 different damage types instead of just 1, and each damage type has a different rider to it. So these riders happen when a creature fails or crit fails their save, and if you're using cold damage, it's a minus 10-foot status penalty to their speeds for 1 round. If it's electricity, the creature's off guard until your next turn. And if it's fire, the creature's going to take 1d10 persistent fire damage or 2d10 on a crit fail. If you're Paragon, that fire damage goes to 2d10 and 4d10. The Intensified Vulnerability. When you fling magic at your EV target, you deal additional damage equal to your level, assuming fling magic did any damage at all. So as long as they take damage, you're adding on your level as damage. It's a big flat damage boost. Paragon benefit, your range is now 180 feet. You have access to all 3 damage types, and when you fling, you can either choose one creature or hit everybody in a 20-foot burst. The remaster has given this implement buffs on top of buffs, and it needed them, honestly. So the damage used to be, at initiate level, 1d4 plus your charisma modifier. 3d4 is straight up higher. Not a lot higher, but it is straight up higher, right? The average of 3d4 is 7.5. The average of 1d4 plus charisma modifier, assuming you have a +4, which you really should, is 6.5. So it's only a slight increase. That's fine. What really happens is now when you boost your d4s up to d6s, which existed before, but it was worse before, now you've got 3 dice being boosted instead of 1, which increases the average damage on a fail by 3 instead of 1. That's considerable. Right now we're up to 10.5 average on a fail when you're using the d6s. That actually feels pretty solid, especially at level 1. And the way it used to work, you'd have to wait 1d4 rounds for this d6 increase to recharge. Now it's just every other round you can do it, which is a solid boost, and it's reliable. Yes, they took away the ability for a critical strike to bring this back, but no, this is an all-out win. This is just a win, so much better that it's reliable and it's every other round. So anyway, all of that feels really solid. What I don't want to ignore is the fact that this is an active implement using 2 actions. That's hard to fit on a normal playstyle. So instead, you're building your own playstyle here. And like before, I think that would have been really hard to run with. And now I think it's a little more viable than it used to be. So if you do take this, keep in mind that you're not taking advantage of exploit vulnerability the same way you were before, unless you're also going to wield a one-handed weapon that maybe doesn't require reload that you can fling off. That exists. The repeater is probably the best one. In fact, somebody in the comments last time mentioned that they have a wand and repeater build that they like, and yeah, that sounds like the best way to gain from this and still gain the effects of the exploit vulnerability. But if you're not doing that, then this damage you're doing won't trigger the exploit vulnerability because it's not a strike you're making. So just keep that in mind. This is a different build. Now, the adept boosts they're all good for different situations. It might be hard to choose exactly which elements you want because you probably base it off those buffs. And it really depends on what you're looking for. Maybe you just want damage on top of damage, go fire. I like creatures being off guard. If you've got a rogue in the party, that's an easy call. But you can fling really far, so -10 status penalty to speeds for a creature might mean they can't even get to you for an extra turn. The Ivy boost also got a buff, by the way. It used to give the next cast a damage boost equal to 1 plus the number of damage die, which, remember, there were fewer damage die before, and that wasn't amazing, and it still would be okay now, but it's not great. Straight up adding your level is really solid. At level 9, adding a flat 9, and if you're using d6s, on a fail, that's an average of 33.5 damage, and that's solid. Again, that's not a bad number, and that's just on a fail. The Paragon benefit goes nuts. 180-foot range is really far. You probably don't need more than 120 normally, but that's really cool. Making this a turn after turn 20-foot AoE, which is, keep in mind, a 20-foot burst is what Fireball is. Yeah, this is going to end up being like 6th ranked Fireballs every other round, which is really good for annihilating a lot of minions, a lot of smaller enemies. The big issue I have is just how it doesn't really fit the class terribly well. I think this is a good implement now. I really do like it. I didn't like it before. I would take it to Paragon if I took it, and that would normally say it's an A. I'm going to drop it down to a B only because it doesn't fit with the class well. It does not work with exploit vulnerability the way that the rest of our implements do, and I actually think that is a bit of a miss here. Otherwise, really solid. You can definitely build around this entirely. All right, and finally we have the weapon. Initiate benefit, you gain Implement's Interruption. This is a reaction. The trigger is the target of exploit vulnerability uses a manipulate, concentrate, or move action, or leaves a square that's adjacent to you. Well, not necessarily adjacent, or we'll get to that. Or leaves a square during a move action. You have to be holding the weapon implement itself and benefiting from exploit vulnerability against that target. The target must be within your reach for a melee weapon or within 10 feet if it's a ranged weapon. Then you make a strike. If it's a crit, then whatever action they were using is disrupted. This does not count toward your multiple attack penalty as usual. At level 5, you also get the critical specialization effect for your weapon. The adept benefit, when you implements interruption, the reaction, and you fail, so you use the reaction, you strike, but you fail, not crit fail, but fail, you're still going to do 1 damage, which means that 1 damage also triggers the weakness of your exploit vulnerability target. So you get to do the weakness damage on top of just 1 damage. So a fail increases your base damage. And intensify vulnerability, you get a +2 to attack rolls against the target of your EV that round. Finally, Paragon benefit, you disrupt the action that the creature was doing on a hit, not a critical hit. So you're going to interrupt way more often. This is probably one of the easiest implements to understand and use. The reaction you get is basically an upgraded reactive strike, having more triggers here than we have for reactive strike, and the fact that we can use it with ranged weapons. You're one of the very few classes that can get access to reactive strike at level 1. You and fighters. In fact, one of the most powerful uses is actually with a gun or crossbow, because if your EV target comes at you, once they step inside that 10-foot range, you fire, and if you crit, they stop coming at you. They have to waste another action to get up to you, which they might not even have, or they were going to use that action to strike, and now they can't. So that's going to feel good. Just reactive strike itself, though, is solid, right? We all know that. Everybody likes reactive strike for a reason. It's good. It's only against the target of your exploit vulnerability, so make sure that you're trying to toe-to-toe with your EV target, but then it's really solid. Now, this does compete with other reaction implements, and it's not going to benefit allies. It just helps you. Please keep that in mind, because I don't love that. The adept boost I do like a lot. Missing feels bad, always. But now, missing means you're still going to deal possibly considerable damage depending on their weakness. And that raises your damage floor, which I really think feels good. Crit failing a strike is not going to be that common, right? If you're hitting an average creature your level, you probably only have, I don't know, at most a 10% chance to crit fail that strike, maybe a 15% chance, but that means you're going to do damage with the other 80 or 85 to 90% chance of rolls. Yeah, that definitely feels good. The Ivy here, simple, but it's a 10% boost to hit and crit. Great. If you have the ability to use it, you've got the available action, just do it, right? If you've got the chance, if you don't use it. But if you're going to get a strike off, you might as well try to hit hard. I'd rather use that extra action to boost my 1 attack than take 2 attacks. The Paragon benefit is solid, as you will probably have a 50% chance to hit a random creature when you use your reaction, on top of the 10% chance to crit. And then, disruption is just a huge win. No matter what they were doing, it's going to feel good. Extra good against spellcasters, but it's going to feel good against no matter who you're using this on, whatever they're doing. You want to interrupt it, right? Ranged creatures, anybody trying to run away, disrupting them is really punishing. Regular reactive strike triggers from move and manipulate. Adding in concentrate is substantial. Even spells without the manipulate trait, even though a lot of them do have it, usually still have concentrate. So it's almost every spell this works against when you're up against spellcaster. Even actions like demoralize have the concentrate trait. I do wish that the implement could in some way help allies, but one of the best ways to improve how often you trigger your vulnerability is to have this, right? Because you can trigger it outside of your turn as well. If I take this, I often take it as my first implement, but absolutely as a second, if not. And then getting this to Adept is such a feel-good upgrade that I would always take it to Adept. I probably there's a lot of times I wouldn't take this to Paragon, but the disruption is really powerful, so I could absolutely see why you would. All in all, this would be a higher A if it helped allies, or let's say like using the IV means when you hit your EV target, they'd be off guard to others as well or something. That would really help it. That would solidify it. But I still think that this is an A and is probably something you're going to build around. And there we go. All 10 implements ranked. And honestly, it's hard to go wrong. You see a lot of really good rankings here. There's just a lot of really solid implements that are worth your time, that are worth building around, that are worth putting together into really solid, cohesive sets of implements. I would almost always recommend at least one passive in the mix and at least one reaction, because otherwise you may not have a reaction and the passives won't take up your actions. So, you know, starting with a reaction is usually pretty good. Weapon, amulet, bell, or shield. Fill in with active or passive implements as you go from there. Mirror could be really cool with weapon, for instance, or, you know, there's lots of interesting combos in there. What are your go-to combinations? Would you like a video made about talking about interesting combinations? Possibly something I could do. Let me know in the comments below, and as always, adventure on.